He fired me in front of everyone, called me worthless. 2 years later, his company was crashing. And guess who owned the only solution? Me. The look on his face when he realized he needed the woman he'd humiliated was worth every tear I'd shed. Before I reveal how I went from being publicly humiliated to holding this billionaire's fate in my hands, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, the moment he begged for my help will shock you. I always knew I was meant for something bigger than my small-town roots. With my laptop as my only companion through college, I coded until sunrise, dreaming of the day Silicon Valley would know my name. When the email from Vertex Technologies appeared in my inbox, I screamed so loud, my roommate thought I was being attacked. But it was just the sound of my life finally beginning. Walking through those glass doors on my first day felt surreal. The headquarters was everything I'd imagined. Sleek, modern, buzzing with brilliant minds. And somewhere in that building was Alexander Reed, tech visionary, billionaire CEO, and now my boss. I'd studied his rise to fame, memorized his keynotes, and now I'd be working on projects he would personally review. My hands trembled as I set up my workstation, arranging my monitors just so, determined to prove I belonged. The first time Alexander visited our department, the air literally changed. Everyone sat straighter, typed faster. He moved with this confidence that made you want to impress him, to be noticed. When his eyes landed on my prototype, and he nodded, just once, just slightly, I felt like I'd won an Olympic gold medal. Promising, he said, before walking away. That single word fueled me for weeks, but the dream job quickly revealed its true colors. Alexander's constructive feedback sessions were more like public executions. I watched him reduce my colleague to tears over a minor user interface issue. Mediocrity is a disease I won't tolerate, he announced to the room. Something twisted in my stomach, but I pushed the feeling away. Not me, I thought. I'll be different. So I worked harder. Dinner became a sad sandwich at my desk. Weekends disappeared into code reviews and feature enhancements. My friends stopped inviting me out because they knew my answer. But each sacrifice felt worth it when Alexander began mentioning my name in department meetings. We need more dedication like hers, he'd say. And I'd glow with pride, ignoring the dark circles under my eyes, reflecting in my monitor. Then came the Nexus project, Alexander's vision for a revolutionary payment platform. When he selected me for the core development team, I called my parents crying with joy. This was it, my chance to truly shine. I poured everything into that project, finding elegant solutions to impossible problems, staying at the office until the cleaning staff became my friends. My whole future hinged on making Nexus perfect. If only I'd known what that perfection would cost me. The presentation day arrived after 3 months of practically living at the office. My hands were clammy as I smoothed down my carefully chosen outfit, a navy blazer I'd splurged on just for this occasion. The boardroom filled with executives in suits worth more than my car. Alexander sat at the head of the table, scrolling through his phone, barely acknowledging the room. When he finally looked up and nodded at me to begin, I took a deep breath and launched into the presentation I'd rehearsed until 2 a.m. The Nexus payment system was revolutionary. Faster processing, better security, seamless user experience. I could see heads nodding, expressions of approval. For 15 glorious minutes, I was flying. Then it happened. During the live demo, the system lagged for 3 seconds, just 3 seconds. In any normal situation, it would have been a minor hiccup, easily explained by the test server environment. But nothing was normal with Alexander Reed watching. Is this a joke? His voice cut through the room like ice. 3 months of development, and you can't even run a simple demonstration. The room went silent. I stammered, trying to explain the temporary server issue, but he was already standing. This is exactly why we're losing ground to competitors. Incompetence. He jabbed a finger toward my screen. This is garbage, worthless, just like the time we've wasted on you. My vision blurred. I remember trying to speak, but no words came out. He continued his tirade, each word more cutting than the last. Pack your things today. We need people who deliver, not excuses. The walk from the boardroom to my desk stretched like a mile. Everyone avoided eye contact. My team members, people I'd stayed up all night with, people I thought were friends, suddenly found their keyboards fascinating. Only May, the UX designer, came over to help as I robotically placed my belongings into a cardboard box. "He's done this before," she whispered. "It's not you, but it felt like me." It felt like everything I was had been judged and found deficient. Security watched as I left the building, as if I might steal something or cause a scene. I held it together until I reached my car, then collapsed against the steering wheel, ugly sobs racking my body. I'd given that company everything: my time, my creativity, my health. And in return, I got public humiliation and a cardboard box of desk plants and coffee mugs. That night, I deleted all my social media apps after seeing the sympathetic messages that felt more like pity. I couldn't bear to tell my parents, who had bragged to everyone about my amazing job. How do you explain to the people who raised you to believe you were special that someone looked at your life's work and called it worthless? The weeks after my firing melted together. I remember the smell of my unwashed hair, the stack of delivery food containers, the silent phone that no recruiters were calling. When you're fired by Alexander Reed, word gets around. I became a cautionary tale in Silicon Valley. The girl who wasn't good enough. Rock bottom came exactly 27 days after being fired. I was still in pajamas at 2 p.m., scrolling through job listings I didn't have the courage to apply for, when my former professor, Dr. Liu, called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "I heard what happened," she said, no preamble. "Are you coding?" The question caught me off guard. "What's the point?" I mumbled. "The point," she said sharply, "is that you're a brilliant engineer whose work I've admired since you were a sophomore. One man's temper tantrum doesn't change that." Something cracked open inside me. Anger, maybe, or pride. We talked for an hour, and by the end, she'd convinced me to look at the Nexus problem again, but on my terms. "The payment authentication system you were designing solves a problem every financial tech company has," she reminded me. "So solve it." That night, I showered for the first time in days. I cleared the takeout containers, opened the windows, and set up my personal laptop. No pressure, no screaming CEO, just me and the problem I knew I could solve. I started coding again, not for Vertex, but for myself. The solution I'd been working on had flaws. I could see that now. Without the pressure of Alexander's impossible deadlines, I found a cleaner approach. 2 weeks of intensive work later, I had a prototype that made the Vertex version look like a child's drawing. Dr. Liu introduced me to a former student of hers who ran a small investment firm. Over coffee, I showed him my prototype. His eyes widened as he realized the implications. "This solves the authentication bottleneck every fintech company is struggling with," he said. "You could sell this as a service." With his seed funding, SecureFlow was born. My company, my rules. The first year was brutal. I worked from a tiny apartment, eating ramen, fighting for meetings with companies who were skeptical of a solo female founder with a complicated past. But gradually, small clients took chances on me. The authentication system worked flawlessly. Word began to spread. I hired my first employee 10 months in, May, who had quit Vertex soon after me. Together, we refined the product, making it faster, more secure, more elegant. I no longer thought about Alexander Reed. I was too busy building something that was truly mine. 18 months after founding SecureFlow, I was in a meeting with a potential client when my phone started vibrating nonstop. I excused myself to check it, worried something had gone wrong with our servers. Instead, I found dozens of notifications about Vertex Technologies. Their new payment platform, the one they'd continued developing after firing me, had suffered a catastrophic security breach. User data exposed, transactions compromised. Their stock was in free fall. Financial blogs were having a field day with headlines like Vertex's fatal flaw and Reed's billion-dollar blunder. I felt nothing, not satisfaction, not revenge, just a strange sense of distance, like reading about a car accident in another city. I had moved on until May burst into my office the next morning, eyes wide. "They're looking for us," she said, breathless. "Vertex's security team has been asking around about Secure Flow. They know our system doesn't have the vulnerability theirs does." For 3 days, I waited for the call I knew was coming. Secure Flow had become the industry's gold standard for secure payment processing. Vertex's competitor, Apex Digital, had already approached us about acquisition. Our solution was exactly what Vertex needed to recover from their disaster. When my phone finally rang with an unknown number, I let it go to voicemail. The message was from Vertex's new chief technology officer, not Alexander, but his right hand. They wanted a meeting, urgent, confidential. I made them wait 2 days before agreeing. Power moves, as my new business mentor called them. When I finally agreed to the meeting, I named a private dining room at an upscale restaurant. Neutral territory, on my terms. The CTO looked exhausted when we met, shadows under his eyes from what I imagined were endless crisis meetings. "We've analyzed every solution on the market," he said, after awkward pleasantries. "Your authentication protocol is the only one that would integrate with our existing architecture and provide the security we need." I nodded, sipping my water. "And Alexander, is he aware of this meeting?" The CTO's expression tightened. "Mr. Reed has been resistant, but the board is insistent we explore all options." I smiled, feeling a flutter of something I hadn't expected, anticipation. "I'll need to meet with him directly before I consider any partnership." The look of panic on the CTO's face was almost comical. "That might be difficult given your history." "It's non-negotiable," I interrupted, surprised by my own boldness. "If Vertex wants Secure Flow's solution, Alexander and I need to clear the air." As I drove home from that meeting, I realized I was finally going to face the man who had once shattered my confidence. But this time, I wouldn't be the nervous engineer, desperate for approval. I would be the CEO with the solution he desperately needed. The Vertex headquarters looked exactly the same, yet everything was different. The receptionist who had once barely acknowledged me now smiled too brightly, offering coffee while I waited. Former colleagues passed by, doing double takes when they recognized me. I sat straight-backed in the visitors' area, my company's portfolio open on my tablet, a woman waiting for a business meeting, not a supplicant hoping for mercy. When Alexander's assistant led me to the corner office, I felt a momentary flutter of the old anxiety. Then I remembered, I didn't need this meeting. He did. Alexander Reed looked older than I remembered. Success adds a glow that failure quickly diminishes. He stood as I entered, but didn't extend his hand. "I understand we have mutual interests to discuss," he said, voice carefully neutral. "Do we?" I set my tablet on his desk, taking the seat across from him, without waiting to be invited. "My company is doing quite well. Your board members seem to think we could help Vertex with its situation." His jaw tightened at my terminology. The security breach wasn't just a technical failure, it was his failure. "Your authentication system has some elements that could complement our recovery strategy," he conceded. I almost laughed at the understatement. "My authentication system is the industry standard now. What Vertex needs isn't a complement. It's a complete replacement for your compromised infrastructure." For 2 hours, we talked business, technical specifications, integration timelines, licensing terms. He was professional, engaged, occasionally even impressed by the elegance of Secure Flow's solution. Not once did he reference our history. Not once did he acknowledge what he'd done, until I stood to leave. "Why did you agree to this meeting?" he asked suddenly. "After what happened, you could have told us to go to hell." Many would have. I paused, considering the man before me, the great Alexander Reed, now needing the woman he'd once discarded. 2 years ago I thought you destroyed me. I said quietly. But you actually set me free. I built something better, without the constraints of your company, without the fear of your temper. I'm here because helping Vertex is good business for Secure Flow, and because I wanted you to see exactly what you threw away. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, regret, respect. You've built something remarkable, he said finally. I was wrong about you. It wasn't an apology. Alexander Reed didn't apologize. But in his world, admitting he was wrong might have been harder than saying sorry. The partnership agreement was signed a week later. Secure Flow would provide the security backbone for Vertex's new payment platform. Our name featured prominently in all materials. The deal quadrupled our company valuation overnight. At the announcement press conference, Alexander and I stood side by side, smiling for the cameras. A reporter asked how this unlikely partnership came to be, given the rumors of our professional history. Alexander looked at me, a question in his eyes. It was my story to tell, or not. Sometimes the right solutions come from unexpected places, I said smoothly. The tech world is too small for old grievances. Later, at the reception, he approached me with 2 glasses of champagne. That was generous, he said, offering me one. You could have told them the truth. I accepted the glass, meeting his gaze. The truth is, I'm not the same person you fired. That woman was desperate for your approval. This woman doesn't need it. He nodded slowly. And yet, I find I want your approval now. Ironic. We clinked glasses, 2 CEOs, acknowledging a shifting power dynamic. I don't work for Alexander Reed anymore. In many ways, with our company's fortunes now intertwined, he works partly for me. We're not friends, but we're something more interesting. Equals who've seen each other at our worst and our best. Sometimes karma doesn't strike like lightning. Sometimes it builds slowly, rearranging the world piece by piece, until one day, you're standing exactly where you're meant to be. And that's how the man who once called me worthless, in front of a room full of executives, ended up needing me more than anyone. Sometimes karma takes its time, but it always delivers. If this story of resilience inspired you, smash that like button and subscribe for more true stories of underdogs who came out on top. Comment below with your own comeback story. I read every single one.